Have you ever felt like you were getting close to someone, only for them to suddenly pull away? One moment things feel deep, electric, even intimate, and the next they're cold, distant, and you're left wondering if you imagined the connection. If you've found yourself walking on eggshells, overanalyzing texts, or questioning your worth because someone keeps sending mixed signals, you're not alone. And chances are you're dealing with an avoidant partner. But here's what most people don't know. Avoidants don't just fall in love. They test you first, secretly, subtly, often in ways that feel confusing, dismissive, or even cruel. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 brutal emotional tests that avoidantly attached people tend to put you through before they allow themselves to truly open up. These patterns are rarely obvious, and most people fail them without even realizing they're being tested. But once you understand what's happening beneath the surface, you'll stop taking it personally. You'll stop trying to earn their love by shrinking yourself, and you'll start responding like someone who knows their value. I'm Jim Rohn, and I help people untangle the emotional chaos that often comes with loving someone who keeps you at arm's length. If you've been stuck in a cycle of feeling close, then abandoned, if you're tired of over-functioning while they stay emotionally unavailable, this is the clarity you've been needing. By the end of this video, you'll be able to name the game, recognize the patterns, and most importantly, respond from a place of security instead of fear. So, if you're ready to stop chasing breadcrumbs and start choosing yourself, hit subscribe, and let's get into what's really going on behind the walls of the avoidant heart. When you're in a relationship with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, emotional closeness isn't something they just fall into. It's something they evaluate. They don't rush into intimacy the way someone securely attached might. Instead, they inch toward it the way someone might approach the edge of a cliff, carefully, calculating the risk, always with one foot anchored somewhere safe. To someone who doesn't understand this dynamic, it can feel like they're cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable. But what's really happening is more subtle and, honestly, more strategic. The avoidant mind runs quiet tests beneath the surface, ones they may not even be fully conscious of, to gauge whether closeness equals danger or safety. These are not just defense mechanisms, they're psychological measuring tools. Emotional distance becomes their way of collecting data. Who are you when things get uncertain? Do you chase? Do you pressure? Do you emotionally collapse when they pull back? Or do you hold your ground and stay steady? These reactions tell them something critical, not just about you, but about how safe it might be for them to lean in. What's tricky is that you may experience this push-pull dynamic as rejection, but to the avoidant, it's more like a scanning system, built from early life experiences that taught them closeness could be overwhelming, unpredictable, or even unsafe. That's why they rarely enter relationships from a place of openness. Instead, they begin from a safe emotional distance, watching how you respond to their hesitancy. This isn't cruelty, it's calibration. They're trying to decide, will you respect their pace or try to change it? Will you react to their emotional restraint with anxiety, demands, or protest behavior? Or will you respond with patience, stability, and emotional self-control? See, for the avoidant, emotional distance serves 2 purposes. It protects their sense of independence, and it magnifies your reactions. In their mind, if you can't handle their discomfort with closeness, you become a threat to their autonomy. But if you can hold your own rhythm, stay centered, and not try to force closeness, they interpret that as emotional safety. Not because you don't care, but because you're not emotionally dependent on them. And that difference, it's everything. It's what makes them feel like maybe, just maybe, this connection won't cost them their freedom. So here's the real question. Can you hold steady when the emotional current shifts? Or are you only comfortable when things feel secure? Drop your thoughts in the comments. How do you usually react when someone you care about starts pulling away? Most people assume distance means disinterest. But when you're dealing with someone who leans avoidant, it's rarely that simple. What often looks like a person pulling away just because is usually driven by something much deeper. something they may not even be fully aware of. Avoidants don't always know they're testing you, but on a nervous system level, that's exactly what's happening. They may say they need space, time, or a breather, but what they're really doing is scanning the situation. They're trying to answer a question they don't know how to ask. Is this connection going to trap me? And even more than that, will I lose myself if I get too close to you? That's the invisible tension they carry. It's not that they don't feel strongly. In fact, some avoidants experience deep attraction or love very early. But the more intense the feeling, the more likely it is to trigger a retreat. Because closeness doesn't just bring comfort. It stirs up old fears, old wounds, and all the unhealed places where love once felt overwhelming or unpredictable. So they back up. Not because they don't care, but because the caring itself feels risky. For the person on the receiving end, especially someone with anxious tendencies, this can be disorienting. You feel the connection and then suddenly it's like the other person is building a wall. It's easy to take it personally, but the avoidant isn't just watching what you do. They're tracking how your energy lands. Are you rushing in? Are you trying to fix the distance? Do your attempts to reconnect carry pressure, expectations, or subtle guilt? Or are you able to stay grounded, calm, and emotionally sovereign even when things feel uncertain? See, they're not chasing perfection. They're looking for someone who can maintain their own emotional gravity. Someone who doesn't need to chase or convince. Someone who invites connection but doesn't demand it. In their world, emotional distance isn't punishment, it's protection. It's how they filter who feels safe enough to let in. They don't want someone to fill their emptiness. They want someone who respects their edges, honors their timing, and holds a healthy inner world of their own. That's when their defenses start to shift. Not because they were pushed, but because the space no longer feels threatening. For avoidance, emotional independence isn't optional. It's part of how they hold on to their identity. And if they're ever going to open up fully, they need to feel like they won't lose themselves in the process. So ask yourself, when someone pulls back, do you panic or do you stay rooted? Share your experience in the comments. I want to know how you've handled these moments. For many avoidantly attached individuals, the root of their emotional distance isn't about coldness, it's about survival. Growing up in environments where emotional needs were minimized, dismissed, or met inconsistently, they internalized a powerful lesson: needing others equals vulnerability, and vulnerability often leads to pain. Over time, this lesson hardened into a subconscious belief that relying on someone else emotionally is not just risky, it's dangerous. So when they begin a new relationship, they don't walk in with open arms. They walk in scanning for signs of emotional dependency, not because they're judging their partner, but because deep down, they're gauging, is this safe for me? This is where many people get confused. The avoidant may feel genuine affection, even early signs of love, but the moment things start to deepen, that warmth gets tangled with fear. Their nervous system reads intimacy as potential entrapment, so instead of leaning in, they instinctively step back. And they're watching, not just what you say, but how you respond to the pullback. Do you panic? Do you pressure? Do you take it personally? Or can you hold steady and stay grounded in your own emotional rhythm? This dance is often misunderstood. It's not about manipulation or cruelty. For the avoidant, withdrawing is both a defense and a test. They may cancel plans last minute, pull out of a deep conversation, or go quieter without explanation, not to punish, but to observe. They're asking themselves, often without realizing it, will this person respect my need for space? Or will they emotionally collapse the moment I create distance? The avoidant isn't rejecting the idea of connection, but they're highly sensitive to anything that feels like emotional fusion or a loss of self. If their partner becomes clingy, overly reassuring, or anxious in response, it reinforces their internal belief that emotional intimacy will cost them their autonomy. But if the partner stays calm, gives space without protest, and doesn't try to control the moment, that's when something shifts. For the avoidant, emotional independence in their partner is the green light. It signals, you're not here to consume me, you're here to share the space with me. And that subtle distinction changes everything. This deep need to test emotional dependency stems from one core fear: being overwhelmed. When someone relies too heavily on them to regulate or fix their feelings, the avoidant often feels suffocated, like they're being pulled into emotional quicksand, and from that place, even the most loving intentions can feel threatening. So if you've ever experienced an avoidant partner withdrawing just when things seem to be going well, ask yourself, did you try to pull them back in, or did you let them breathe? The answer might explain more than you think. Let me know in the comments, how do you usually respond when someone you care about creates emotional distance? When someone with an avoidant attachment style begins to feel emotionally close to their partner, their first instinct often isn't to lean in, it's to pull back. And not because they're indifferent. In fact, the opposite is often true. What drives that sudden withdrawal is a surge of emotional overwhelm paired with a deep fear that they'll lose their sense of self. If they grew up in an environment where emotional needs were too heavy, too unpredictable, or constantly ignored, closeness doesn't register as comfort, it registers as pressure. So the moment they sense that their partner might become too dependent on them, whether emotionally, mentally, or energetically, they feel the need to create space. Not to punish, not to reject, but to protect themselves. They're not trying to disconnect from love, they're trying to find out, can I stay close to you without being consumed? Avoidants often don't have the emotional language or tools to express this clearly, so instead of saying what they feel, they retreat. They might go quiet, cancel plans, suddenly stop initiating. These behaviors aren't random. They're attempts to regain balance. It's how they emotionally regroup and check, is this relationship going to drain me, or can it exist without me being the sole emotional caretaker? This is a key distinction. For an avoidant, feeling responsible for someone else's constant emotional state can feel suffocating. It's not that they don't want to support their partner. They just fear being expected to carry that weight all the time. That kind of responsibility often triggers old survival patterns. So when they test for emotional dependency, it's not because they're trying to trap you. It's because they're trying not to feel trapped themselves. If, during this withdrawal, their partner reacts with panic, chasing, or emotional pressure, it reinforces their fear. But if their partner responds with calm, grounded energy, staying emotionally connected without demanding closeness, that's when the avoidant feels a shift. A quiet kind of safety starts to build. Suddenly, they're not just surviving in the relationship, they're starting to feel like maybe they can choose it. Because now it's not a trap. It's a space that respects their autonomy and welcomes connection. And that balance, emotional closeness without emotional fusion, is exactly what allows them to begin opening up on their own terms. So let me ask you this. Have you ever mistaken someone's distance as disinterest when maybe it was fear? Or have you been the one pulling away, unsure how to say you're overwhelmed? Let me know in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. When an avoidantly attached person begins to feel overwhelmed by the emotional closeness in a relationship, their instinct isn't always to talk about it, it's to step back, quietly, subtly, almost as if they're disappearing into the background. But what looks like detachment on the surface is often a coping mechanism running deep beneath. For them, creating space isn't just about avoidance, it's about regulation. Solitude becomes a safe zone where they can make sense of what they're feeling without being flooded by the emotions of another. Being alone provides them with clarity. It calms the noise. But make no mistake, this retreat also serves another purpose. It's a silent emotional litmus test. They're paying close attention to what happens when they pull away. Will their partner panic, chase them, interpret the space as rejection, or will they hold steady and allow space without losing connection? What many people don't realize is that avoidants are constantly, often unconsciously, scanning for emotional self-sufficiency in their partner. It's not a game, it's not manipulation, it's protection. They've learned, usually through inconsistent or invalidating childhood experiences, that needing someone too much leads to disappointment or entrapment. So when they feel intensity in a relationship, they pull away not because they don't care, but because they care more than they know how to manage. They want to know, can this relationship breathe, or will it demand more than I can give? If their partner reacts with anxiety, pushing for closeness, or emotionally unraveling, it signals a dynamic that feels unsafe for the avoidant. But if the response is calm, spacious, and self-contained, the avoidant relaxes. It tells them, I'm not your emotional lifeline, you're whole on your own. That's the moment when real trust can begin to grow. Because the avoidant isn't just looking for love, they're looking for safe love. The kind that doesn't pressure, cling, or threaten their independence. They're not looking for someone to rescue them or depend on them for constant emotional regulation. They're looking for someone who can hold their own, especially when things feel uncertain. So when they retreat, they're watching, not because they want to cause pain, but because they're terrified of losing themselves in someone else's emotional needs. This need to pull back often confuses the anxiously attached partner, who may interpret the distance as rejection and respond by clinging harder. But that anxious pursuit only pushes the avoidant further away, confirming their deepest fear. Closeness will cost me my freedom. If you're in a relationship like this, ask yourself, can I respect space without making it mean something about me? Can I hold my center without needing constant reassurance? The way you answer those questions might determine not just how an avoidant responds to you, but whether the relationship can actually evolve into something lasting. So now, I'm curious, have you ever experienced this kind of dynamic, where distance felt like a test? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. When someone with an avoidant attachment style begins to care more deeply than they expected, something subtle but powerful tends to happen. They step back. Not to punish or reject, but to see what happens when the emotional atmosphere cools. They might pull away, go quiet, or seem distant, almost like testing the emotional air pressure of the relationship. And during that silence, they're watching closely. Not your words, but your reactions. Will you panic? Will you overreach? Will you cling or demand emotional closeness to soothe your own fear? If so, that may confirm their underlying worry that the relationship will become emotionally lopsided, that they'll be expected to carry more than they can handle. Avoidants aren't testing because they don't care. They're testing because they care and are unsure what safety looks like. They're seeking reassurance, not in what you say, but in how emotionally grounded you are when intimacy pulls back. And here's the catch: the more self-contained and emotionally steady you are, the more they begin to exhale. For someone avoidant, stability in a partner isn't just attractive, it's essential. It signals that this relationship won't consume them, that they can love and breathe. Avoidants deeply value autonomy, not because they don't want connection, but because connection has historically felt like losing control. Many grew up in homes where emotional needs were either dismissed, punished, or left unmet. In that kind of environment, vulnerability becomes dangerous, and over time, it builds a belief. If I open up, I'll be hurt. If I rely on someone, I'll regret it. That belief doesn't just fade because love shows up, so when real feelings emerge in adulthood, so do old defenses. Conversations that ask for emotional honesty, especially ones that require admitting fear, insecurity, or need, can feel like walking into fire. It's not that the avoidant lacks feelings, it's that they've learned to armor up around them. They fear that showing too much will lead to judgment, rejection, or worse. So instead of leaning into the conversation, they freeze, deflect, or withdraw. It's not that they don't want to connect, it's that they don't trust that connection won't cost them their emotional freedom. This creates a frustrating paradox for their partner, especially those with anxious tendencies. You might be craving more intimacy, more openness, while the avoidant is hoping to protect what little emotional ground they feel safe standing on. And yet, when the partner stays emotionally regulated, shows patience instead of panic, and models healthy independence, that's when the avoidant starts to feel safe enough to re-engage. Not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, in quiet moments, where they realize they can be seen without being swallowed. That's the turning point. So let me ask you, have you ever been on either side of this pattern? The one who needed space to feel safe, or the one who misread that space as abandonment? Share your story in the comments. You're not alone, and your voice might help someone else feel a little more understood. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, the desire for closeness often collides head-on with a deep-rooted fear of vulnerability. It's like having one foot on the gas and one on the brake, constantly moving forward and pulling back at the same time. This inner tug-of-war leaves them feeling stuck, unsure how to move through connection in a way that feels emotionally safe. When a conversation starts to dip into emotionally raw territory, topics like fears, needs, or past pain, the avoidant may instinctively shut down. They might change the subject, become uncharacteristically quiet, or even get defensive, not because they're trying to hurt anyone, but because their nervous system is wired to treat emotional openness like a threat. The idea of being fully seen, flaws, doubts, and all, can feel like standing exposed in a storm. Their body responds just like it's under threat: a racing heart, shallow breathing, a tightening in the chest. These aren't signs of apathy, they're signs of alarm. Often, the avoidant doesn't even realize why they're pulling away. They just feel an urge to retreat, to create space and regain control over their emotional landscape. Vulnerability to them can feel like surrendering that control. Taking off the emotional armor they've worn for years feels risky, because what if showing their true self only leads to rejection or disappointment? Yet beneath that fear is a quiet longing for real connection. And with time, patience, and a partner who knows how to create a safe space without pressure, the avoidant can begin to lower their guard. Those once threatening conversations might slowly shift from something they avoid to something they lean into. Have you ever noticed this pattern in someone you've dated, or even in yourself? Share your experience in the comments. Let's open up the conversation together. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, letting their guard down doesn't come naturally. Even when they deeply care about someone, their nervous system often interprets emotional closeness as a risk rather than a reward. This internal tug-of-war between the longing for connection and the fear of being consumed by it creates a pattern many partners recognize all too well: the emotional whiplash of hot and cold behavior. One moment, the avoidant partner might seem present, affectionate, even deeply invested. They'll share laughter, be attentive, maybe even speak openly, and then, almost without warning, the warmth disappears. They pull away, go silent, or retreat into themselves. To the other person, this can feel confusing, hurtful, and destabilizing, but this cycle doesn't come from manipulation, it comes from fear. When intimacy reaches a certain threshold, the avoidant's inner alarm goes off, warning them too close, too much. They instinctively retreat, not because they don't care, but because caring feels like surrendering control. The closer they get, the more exposed they feel, and that vulnerability activates deeply embedded fears of being hurt, overwhelmed, or even abandoned. Their withdrawal is often a way to restore emotional distance, to protect themselves from a closeness that feels threatening to their independence. But for the partner on the receiving end, the switch can be jarring. In the warm phase, they feel connected and secure. In the cold phase, they're left wondering what went wrong. This inconsistency can create a loop where the partner starts chasing the warmth, clinging more tightly, hoping to bring it back. Ironically, this chasing only deepens the avoidant's fear of enmeshment, pushing them further away. It becomes a cycle of pursuit and retreat that neither side truly wants. What many don't realize is that for the avoidant, these hot and cold shifts are less about strategy and more about survival. They're trying to feel safe without giving up themselves. The warmth is real, but it's also risky. The coldness isn't rejection, it's regulation. So, if you've been on the receiving end of this cycle, know this: it's not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their internal conflict. And if you are the avoidant partner, try to notice what triggers your need to retreat. Is it their emotional expression, or your own fear of being fully seen? Opening up doesn't have to happen all at once. It can happen slowly, in safe, grounded spaces where pressure is low and trust is high. Have you ever experienced this push-pull pattern in a relationship? Or maybe you've noticed it in yourself. Drop a comment below. Your insight could help someone else feel a little more seen and a lot less alone. At the heart of it all, avoidant behavior isn't about indifference, it's about protection. Behind the distance, the silence, and the push-pull dynamic is a nervous system trying to stay safe in the only way it knows how. The journey toward emotional connection with an avoidant partner isn't always easy, but it is possible. With awareness, patience, and mutual respect. If you've recognized pieces of this pattern in yourself or someone you care about, remember, the goal isn't to fix or chase, it's to understand, because with understanding comes compassion, and with compassion comes change. We've talked about the inner conflict avoidants face, the deep desire for intimacy tangled up with the fear of losing themselves in it. We've explored the meaning behind hot and cold behavior, emotional withdrawal, and the unspoken tests they use to gauge safety. And maybe, just maybe, this clarity has helped you see things through a new lens. Not to excuse the hurt, but to bring light to the why underneath it. If this video gave you a moment of insight, I want to thank you for being here, for watching, reflecting, and being part of this deeper conversation. Your emotional awareness matters, and the work you're doing to grow is worth honoring. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more content like this, and please leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences. Whether you relate to the avoidant, the anxious, or somewhere in between, your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thanks again for watching, and remember, real love doesn't require you to lose yourself. It invites you to bring your whole self forward.